Now that Trystack's been upgraded to RDO Havana, there's a few extra steps needed to get an instance launched. I'm going to show you what those steps are, as well as show you how to get your API password so you can interact with Trystack from the command line clients. First, you'll need to get your Facebook user added to the Trystack Facebook group, then click Login with Facebook to get into the web interface. We're going to start by creating a private network for our tenant. This will be where our instances run. I'm going to name mine internal. You can use whatever name you'd like. And I'm going to set my subnet to 192.168.37.0/24. If you're not sure what to use, you can use the same value here. I'm also going to set my DNS name servers to one of Google's name servers so that once my external route is created, the DNS is able to be resolved. Next, I'm going to launch an instance. I'm going to launch a Fedora 19 instance, so I'll name it Fedora 19. I'm going to select the small flavor because I need at least that size flavor for my image that I'm going to use. Boot from image, select my Fedora 19 image, and next I'll move to the Access and Security tab. Here I'm going to import an SSH public key. That way when my instance launches, that public key is placed onto my instance so I can log into it without a password. Just using one here off of my laptop. Finally, I'm going to select networking and select my internal network and launch my instance. Now this instance is going to be launched on that private unrouted network inside of my tenant. That means that if I launched other instances on the same network, they could talk to each other, but they can't get out and external can't get in. So let's launch another instance. So we have two running on there, and these two would be able to talk to each other. I'll just go through and launch another Fedora instance here from that same Fedora 19 image I just used. My SSH key pair is already selected because I already imported it, and I can just select my internal network again. Now I have two running, both on my private tenant network. Now in order for that private tenant network to talk to the outside world, we have to connect the internal network that I have my two instances running to the external network by way of a router. So we're going to create a route between the two of them. I'm going to select routers here, and I'm going to call my router Router 1. You can really call it whatever you'd like. To create it, once it's created, you need to set the gateway on it. The gateway connects the router to the external network. Once you've connected to the external network, you can add an interface to the router. This connects your internal network to your router. Now that I have this route created, you can see on the network topology that I have my internal network connected to my external network by way of my router. And now that that route is created, I can go back to the instances and allocate a floating IP to be associated with my instance. Now there's none that's been allocated to my project, so the first thing I need to do is press this plus button so that I can allocate a floating IP to my project. Now that I have a floating IP allocated to the project, I can associate it with my Fedora 19 machine. In the bottom drop-down on that last dialog, I could have also selected my other instance and associated the floating IP to my other instance. Once it finishes associating, it will show up in my IP address column there, right under my private IP. Next, I need to look at the security groups under Access and Security. Security groups are kind of like firewalls. I'm going to add a rule so that I can ping my instance. So I'll select Custom ICMP Rule, -1 for typing code, and that rule will allow me to ping instances in this security group. Next, I'll add a second rule for port 22 so I can SSH in. You can add other security groups or other rules appropriate to what you need for your different instances and how you're going to connect to them. Now that I have these ports open for my instances, I can go back and see that my floating IP is associated with my instance, and I can go ahead and ping it. And now that I see it's pinging, I can SSH to it. When I SSH into it, it will be a passwordless login because my public key was put on that Fedora image for me when it was launched. Now that you can see how to get into your instance, let's look at how to do this by way of the API. What you're going to need to do is get your API password, and to do this, go up to Settings, And then on the left-hand menu, select API password and click Request API Password. This will generate a new password for you and update your account right away so that you can take this password and either log into the dashboard with it or use it at the command line. I've already created a Keystone RC file for my Facebook user, so I'm going to go in and update that file with this new password. So here on this password line, I'll just update the old password with the new one. And you can see that my tenant name is my Facebook ID, my username is my Facebook ID. I've updated the password. This auth URL I got from the API access page in Security and Access. So if you click Project and then Access and Security, there's an API tab over here, and it lists out all the endpoints. These endpoints could change, so if you're having trouble connecting, come in and double check them. Here's the identity one, and you can see it matches what I've put in here. Your auth strategy is Keystone, and if you want to update your PS1, that will help you to know which credentials you're using. Next, I'll source this file to put all this information into the environment. That way, every time I type a command, it uses the environment variables instead of me having to pass all that information. And if I try and list my instances from Nova, it will show the 2 instances that I've just launched. Now you see how to launch an instance in Trystack and how to get your API password to use command line clients. I hope you enjoy using Trystack, which is now running RDO Havana. Check out RDO at openstack.redhat.com.